Hi guys, just another video presentation on the phenomenon of what we call circling approaches. So I'd like to make it very simple in the simplest of explanations that I will be able to offer you on understanding of what a circling approach is and how we execute it, and if we have to go for a missed approach in a circling maneuver, what do we do? So let's try and see some presentation slides in the subsequent uh, presentations of this video, and I'll be taking you step by step on what has to be done in order to execute a circling approach, and if we go for a missed, then how do we cater for the missed approach for the particular circling approach. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so what you see on the screen is some graphics that I've made for me to explain to you what a circling maneuver is. So in this first graphic, we are coming in on runway X. Okay, we are coming in from the right, and we'd like to make a circling approach onto runway Y. So couple of things. First of all, we use minimums for runway X. Okay, that's very important. And what we are doing here is like a visual approach in a sense, okay, which just takes us to the other runway, the opposite runway. Maybe we cannot land on this runway for many reasons. Maybe this runway has been closed, maybe part of the threshold is not okay, or there is an unserviceability of some sort, or just the winds maybe are favoring the opposite runway, and our routing is taken as towards runway X and the like. So there can be many factors that may warrant us to make a circling approach. We approach on one runway, but then we go ahead and land on the opposite runway. That's the basic notion of a circling approach, to circle around the runway. So we're coming on one runway, and then we circle around to go to the other runway. So if we are coming in from the right hand side rather, okay, we have a final approach fix here. For example, let's say we're doing an RNAV approach for now, and then the procedure for RNAV approach is 2 nautical miles from the final approach fix. You start doing your final configuration for the landing. So you'll configure your landing gear down, and your flaps will be deployed. It will be your final flap setting will depend on whether you are coming with a single engine or dual engine. And if you are coming single engine, on the dash 8 is flap 15, so you'll keep flap 15 all the way down to the landing. If you're coming with 2 engines, normal operations, then of course your landing flap will be 35, which will deploy later, not at this stage. Alright, if you are coming in for a localizer only approach, for example, then at localizer capture, you definitely will descend, but the same phenomenon will apply as in 2 nautical miles from final approach fix. Or in the localizer only case, it will be the ILS intercept point, which will be your point to work out backwards for the 2 nautical mile distance from that particular point for you to start configuring. That's our localizer only approach. And then of course for localizer only approach, when you reach the center fix or the intercept point, you will be going vertical speed and start descending down as per the tables provided on the approach plate. Okay, so that's the first thing that we'll do here. Now, what I've said here right in the italics is you can preset heading, the heading bug on 45-degree mark. So when the turn comes, the turn here, that you want to now break off from your approach path, you have to break off to 45 degrees, you can just press heading select. I'll show you below how the 45-degree markers look like on the PFT of the Dash 8 Q400, which is just a screenshot of the Majestic simulator, which is pretty much the same as in the real aircraft. Okay, so as we now are going to start descending, and we are in the descent here, as we start descending, we are going to descend to what you call the minimums for the circling approach. Okay, that's very important. So you have set those minimums in your altitude, rather your barometric settings on the PFT, and then you've also set the minimums on your altitude select knob with alt cell. All right, as you continue going down, so you descend to those minimums. Now when you capture that altitude, so you'll have alt star then alt capture, and is very important, and when you have runway in sight. So these two criteria must be met before you execute the heading select and you turn 45° to the runway heading of runway X. So you have to have altitude capture, and then you keep going until you have the runway in sight. That's very important because this whole maneuver is visual. So you have to have the runway in sight. When you break clouds, for example, then you do a couple of things on this leg. The first thing is that you'll press heading select, or if you haven't set the 45° heading to the runway, you will set it and press heading select. The whole idea of just presetting the 45° is just so you reduce your workload. So you just go heading select once you are here and these two criteria have been met. So a couple of things you'll do here is that you're going to go heading select, you'll set the altitude to the missed approach altitude, and then you're going to have your nav source will go nav mode, FMS mode rather, nav source to FMS mode if you're coming in blue needles. That is, if you're doing a localizer approach, for example, or ILS, and then you had to break off for some reason, then your nav source should go into FMS mode because you have to follow all this procedure in LNAV. And the next thing you'll do, you'll start timing. Now the timing depends on various SOPs. Of course, you will start timing here depending on the wind. And if you have a tailwind, you will reduce your timing. If you have a headwind, you will increase your timing. So at least you are somewhat 2 nautical miles roughly from the runway, as indicated by your magenta track on the MFD. A good way of remembering those steps is HANT, which I've come to make myself. HANT meaning heading, altitude, nav source, and then time. So those are sort of things that you will do on this particular leg here. Once your time is up, then you will turn the downwind leg straight onto, which will be the runway heading of X, obviously, downwind, until you are abeam the touchdown. Once you're abeam the touchdown, you will again start timing. And the timing here also may depend on various SOPs. The SOPs that we use, we just take the first 2 digits of the above flight level, above aerodrome level rather, altitude for the circling maneuver, and we times it by 3. So if the circling approach is 1,000 feet, we'll knock off the 2 zeros and we'll take 10 times 3 is 30 seconds. If the circling approach is at 1,200 feet, for example, we'll again take off the 2 zeros. It will become 12 times 3 is 36 seconds. And those are timings you will set once you've passed abeam the touchdown point of the runway Y in this case. Okay, and after that, and also cater for the wind. So if you have a tailwind, you will have a less timing. If you have a headwind, you'll have a larger timing, so that you can counteract the effects of the wind to give you a good turning profile on the base leg. Once the timing is up, after required timing, you make a continuous turn to the base and final and select the landing flaps. So once you are here, your timing is up, you'll start turning, and then you start you only descend once you have the runway in sight and you've got the visual profile. Okay, and then you're going to go all the way down, and you will, excuse me for that, you will execute the circling maneuver. Okay, now you'll come in for the landing here, for example, but then let's say, for example, you have to go around. That's the next thing. So all this we've discussed, it's pretty much very much self-explanatory until all this. Now let's say you are here and then the tower says you've got to go around. Maybe there's an obstacle on the runway, or maybe you're not stabilized, and various other reasons that warrant you to go around and come back again. What would you do? What you do here is just remember a very simple rule. I've come across this myself. I haven't read it anywhere, but after doing so many of these trainings, I come across this little rule that if you are going to turn right to land, when you go missed, you must also turn right to intercept the misapproach of the runway you're coming into. This red line on this diagram is a misapproach for runway X. So it means that you turned right here to go into runway Y. When you go missed, you're going to turn right again to intercept the misapproach procedure. You can see that this blue line now will be intercepting at a particular heading this misapproach path. Okay, so you'll do all configurations here, but you can keep your flaps at least for a while so that you don't go beyond the protected area. And then once you are level on this segment going to intercept the misapproach profile, that's when you can retract your final flaps. Okay, that's one thing I wanted to very emphasize on quite a bit, so I've written down here in quite big letters and words that you can read. If you turn right to the landing runway, you must turn right to intercept the misapproach profile. For the runway, you executed a circling maneuver. So you executed a circling maneuver for runway X, and you've done all this. Instead of landing here, you thought, okay, I don't think I'll make it because of so and so reason, so you will turn right again after you go around and intercept the misapproach for the runway you're coming into. I hope that makes sense. Another scenario, now we can go to the opposite runway. So this time now we are coming into runway Y. Everything remains the same as I've said in the previous explanation. Everything in this box and this box is the same. I told you that I'll be showing you the 45-degree markers on the compass rose. So here they are. You see these white little triangles on the compass rose of the PFD. Those are the 45-degree markers. So you could set your heading bug to be on the 45-degree mark, which is relative to the runway, so that when you come in for the turn to 45 degrees, for example, in this case, this one here, for example, you just have to press heading select. It is just like being ahead of the game. Okay, so now here, everything else is the same as what I've said early on for the runway X. The only thing I'll add here is now the misapproach. So let's say you did all the procedures here, you came here and then you couldn't land for some sort of reason again. So now you can see that here you've turned left to go into runway X. So for the misapproach, you'll again turn left to intercept the misapproach profile for runway Y. So you make a right turn, you turn right for misapproach. You make a left turn, you make a left turn for misapproach. That's about it. So the 180 degree that they talk about in the manuals, some people have found it a bit confusing. They didn't know what it makes, shortest turn or blah blah blah. But this is basically what it is. So this is the shortest turn. Okay, just remember which way are you turning to land, and the same direction will be for your missed approach. So again here, I said, if you turn left to the landing runway, you must turn left to intercept the missed approach profile for the runway you executed a circling maneuver. Now, sometimes misapproaches don't have any left or right turns. They can be just runway heading. So if the misapproach routing is runway heading, then you can turn either left or right as long as you keep clear of the terrain or any restrictions. So that's a very important thing to remember. So far I think it's very self-explanatory and pretty much an easy maneuver to do once you keep practicing it in the simulator, and most of the time you're also practicing it in real time in the real aircraft, like some of us do most often. Now I want us to just finalize this presentation by an approach plate. This is an ILS approach plate into Addis Ababa's Bole International, runway 25 left. Okay, I will not go obviously into all the details here, but I'll start from the bottom. Whenever you do a circling approach, you always look at the circle to land section on the particular chart. Clearly it says here, on this airport, the circle to land is not authorized north of the runway between the radial 315 Alpha Delta Sierra and radial 068 Alpha Delta Sierra. So pretty much on these headings here, north is not allowed, and you can clearly see why. Obvious reasons, terrain, and you cannot do anything on this side of the airfield due to high terrain. So if you are going to come into runway 25 left, circling maneuver, the first thing you would have done on your barometric altitude setting is to set your circling minimums. Okay, now the circling minimums obviously are the MDAs which you have here, but you have to add 50 feet because a non-precision approach. And for your category, the dash 8 is category C, so it's 8650 plus 50. You're going to have 8,700 as your circling minimum. So you'll have to descend down to 8,700. So we are coming in on this heading 252. Okay. And let's say, for example, at this particular point, we have captured the altitude 8700 feet. And we have seen the runway. This then what we'll do, we'll go heading 207, that is 252. We make a left turn, it is going to be minus 45. If it's a right turn, you make it plus. So here it will be minus 45 degrees, and then you're going to do all the hand items here. Okay, so the heading has been done. Altitude will be the miss approach, which will be 14,000. Nav source to FMS, and you start timing as per your SOP on this particular leg. Once your timing is finished, you don't go very far from the runway, approximately 2 nautical miles or 2.5 or 3 maximum. Then you start turning downwind, and then you go all the way. Then you start turning your base and your final, where you will do your final configuration if you're coming in with a dual engine. If it was single engine, then obviously you will just keep this final flap setting as flap 15 all the way to the landing. Now you reach at this particular point, and the tower says you've got to go around, or maybe you're not stabilized, or for any reason you have to go around. You can see that you have turned right here, so that when you go around, you'll again turn right to intercept this miss approach procedure for runway 25 left, which is turning on a radial of 193 of the VOR Alpha Delta Sierra. So you will turn right and you'll intercept this radial at around 30 degrees. So 193 plus 30 will be maybe 223. So you'll set 223, and then you can intercept this radial in this way. If you're in nav source of FMS, it will do it automatically for you, because you have programmed for runway 25 left, and the miss approach is also programmed in the FMS. So you just have to go nav, and then the nav will actually capture this radial, which will follow all the way, and then you'll have to come back and do another procedure as dictated by the ATC or radar vectors or whatever. So this is basically about it. And also I talked about the localizer only approach, for example, for our discussion purposes. This localizer only approach is, let's say when you reach this point here, which is the glide stop capture, 2 nautical miles before this point, you start doing gear down, flap 15, your condition levers goes to max, your bleeds go to min, you do a landing checklist. Okay, and then if you're coming in with 2 engines, you'll do flaps 35. When you hit this point, which is 7 miles from the India Alpha ILS, okay, 7 miles, what you will do, you'll go vertical speed here, and then you start descending in vertical speed all the way down, and your pilot monitoring will be reading this table from right to left. So at 7 miles you are hitting this point at 9880, at 6 miles 9570, at 5 miles 92550, and so on and so forth. And you do your height checks, and then you adjust your vertical speed accordingly, going downhill until you capture the altitude. And when you have the runway in sight, then that means you do your circling procedure as I've just explained. I hope this is making sense for this particular presentation, and if there's any comments or anything else you can add, it will be much more welcomed, as I keep saying that we are always learning as aviators from each other. Thank you very much. Be safe as always, happy landings, and always keep safety as your paramount importance in flying. Never compromise safety for any reason that may be given to you whatsoever. Go well, and thank you very much, and we'll be posting another video for another tutorial soon coming up.